reef rye.
Okay.
Kind of loosely based off of brown ale.
I'll tell people my
But with a rye, a pretty good rye base to it. So it actually has about, I think it's close to 40% rye, different malted rye and flaked rye. So you get a little slight bit of spiciness from the rye, but you don't get like the big pumpernickel, you know, kind of boot, because you're not really using carrot with caraway, right? Pumpernickel.
Yeah, right, right.
So, but we're kind of playing on that caraway kind of flavor and spice by adding the coriander.
You can definitely smell the coriander just in
I think you get that kind of woody, rosy kind of hints to it. And then the hops too. Palisade hops that I'm using almost have an apricot-y kind of a flavor to them. So I think kind of all balances really well. Malty beer, not too bitter, but still hop.
Right, absolutely.
Which is kind of a nice, and that comes from tail end use.
Is that the dry hopping you were talking about, or the?
Yeah, dry hopping, and again, it's a low bitterness. You know, I still wanted some brown ale characteristics and some nice toasty and nuttiness to kind of come in as well. So
really good, yeah.
Real bready,
nice and
flavor. A good food beer as well. You know, anything spicy.
Bready, but floral and aromatic too at the same time.
Yeah, you get all those hop oils in there from the Palisades, and the oils from the coriander as well. So.
Awesome. Delicious.
Hyper Down Scottish Ale. So it's a Scottish ale. It's lower alcohol. It's not a Scotch ale like you would normally see. One of the biggest differences between a Scottish ale and a Scotch ale, besides the alcohol, is that usually Scottish ales don't have any peated malt in it, any smokiness really to it.
Oh, okay.
Kind of traditionally, they would have a roasted malt in there. So I'm actually using a roasted barley in our Scottish ale, which kind of gives it an undertone of a little bit of a not smoky, but definitely a roastiness, almost a stout kind of flavor underneath it, even though it's a red ale. The other fun thing about this beer is that, well, two things actually, is one, it's a 3-hour boil, which is 3 times longer than we boil most of our other beers.
Right.
And what happens is you not only pick up some color, some kind of the reddish, amberish tones to it, but you also create melanoid sugars. As the sugars keep crashing into them over that time, they become longer sugar chains and therefore more malty, and you're almost candying the sugar in the kettle. So you kind of have these kind of candy cane, really rich caramel sugars that you're creating in the kettle that you really can't get from crystal malts.
And that's part of how you get more color by doing it? Is it
that's one way. Most people use a more heavily roasted crystal malt, which has darker colors to it. Where we're using kind of lighter crystal malts, then boiling it longer to create color and different sugars in the final product. And then it's an ale, but we actually ferment down around 62, 60 degrees. So normally an ale is fermented at 70. So we create a much cleaner fermentation profile, so you don't get a lot of heavy fruitiness to it. You know, it almost has some lagerish kind of characteristics to it a little bit too. So.
Is that down around the fermentation range of an average lager, or is that still higher?
Lager's usually around 50.
Okay.
There are hybrid lager yeasts like Anchor Steam. You know, they use a steam yeast which loves the 60-degree range. But that's a lager yeast that's fermented warmer. So we're doing an ale yeast that's fermented colder, which is a lot harder because you know, most bacteria don't like getting colder to remain active. You know, they like getting warmer.
It's also a bit of a longer fermentation process than
just
an ale,
slightly,
or
not too much. And again, we're not dealing with a high alcohol beer either, so with the healthy yeast, it can rip through pretty quick. Maybe an extra day. It's saison inspired. It's definitely far from a traditional saison. I could go as far as saying it's a San Diego farmhouse ale. Looking for ingredients that either Cabrillo had on his boat when he landed on Ballast Point, or what the Kumeyaay Indians were eating and growing and pretty much harvesting indigenously through Mission Valley. So ingredients like manzanita berries, elderberries, elderflowers, white sage.
So this is what you were calling the farmhouse ale.
San Diego farmhouse. And we went and picked all of those actually at a homestead up in the mountains. And we also put in some local sage blossom honey from Santee. I roasted pine nuts. There's a little bit of agave in there, and corn. It's a big corn base to this beer too, which was, you know, pretty much staple as well.
So many floral components going on in that. I think you can smell it and taste it in the sage.
It smells like East County. It smells like a hike.
Yeah,
just
right, exactly.
In East County, where you rub it up against sage and different bushes. And, it's I don't know. It's a fun beer. I mean, these kinds of beers are fun for sure. So. This is our Black Marlin Porter
Yep.
that we do year round, but I infused it with cocoa nibs and chipotle peppers. So it's smoked, dried chipotle peppers. And kind of going after that, a lot of chocolatiers nowadays are making that cayenne pepper, salty chocolate, kind of that sweet, savory kind of flavor to it. So I think it works pretty good with the roasty chocolate grains and the porter. And the smokiness from the peppers as well.
I definitely get the smokiness, and we get a little tingle on the tongue there.
Yeah, you get a nice little bit of heat, and yeah, I mean, it's again great food beer. We just did a beer dinner with the Lodge at Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
And they did a Mexican chocolate cake with this beer. So once you added the cinnamon to the beer, you had the bridge flavoring between the chocolate and the cake, the chocolate and the beer, that little bit of spiciness in the beer, a little bit of cinnamon in the cake, and then they did a chipotle grenache on top of it too, which was pretty insane.